YOLO, guys. It's your boy Found Popcorn. Pounding popcorn. Pound popcorn. Why? Found Popcorn 798 here. How are you guys doing? Here with a new type of reaction. How did the British Empire rule the world? Now, I am British. I am from England, part of the British Empire. And I want to see how much British knowledge and British history I actually know. Now, I know quite a lot of history, but let's see if I actually do. If you like this kind of video, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe. If you're new, turn that red button for me, guys. And of course, hit the bell icon as well to stay up to date whenever I release a new video. And without further ado, let's see how much I actually know about this. How did the British Empire rule the world?
To you, ladies of Spain. The British Empire may not have technically ruled the world,
No.
but it was, in fact, the largest empire.
It was the largest, before we get into this, the British Empire was the largest empire throughout the known world. Not the entire world, throughout the known world throughout the time period. Its last major colony was was given away, which was Hong Kong in 1997. But no, we ravished quite a lot of the world, guys, and at least 60 countries, if I'm not much mistaken, celebrate their independence from British rule. And at least 117 countries, I believe it's 117 countries, have at least been violently visited in the past by us British. So I do know that, but that's a bit. Before we get into it, before he speaks, guys.
To exist at any point throughout history, reaching across the globe and carrying on over multiple.
When you look at that, guys, that's pretty astonishing. Technically speaking, there should be a bit of Russia up there, guys, because we did, technically speaking, conquer a bit of Russia. I can't remember what time period it was, but there was a time in history where we did conquer a bit of Russia, roughly around that bit there, guys. So I do know that.
Centuries, the British Empire owes its success and ability to expand so widely. The geographical position of Great Britain served as a major advantage to the growing empire.
Yeah, it's because we were cut off from the mainland and weren't surrounded, because we had that advantage for us there, guys. Due to the fact of not just that, but our terrain and the way the ocean floor was, just everything and everything contributed to our ability to spread out a bit more and stop invasions coming in as well. We got a natural defensive area. Now, if I'm mistaken about any of this, guys, please let me know. I'm more than willing to love learning, guys. I love history, so if I get any of this wrong, please let me know down below. And our first area of conquest was actually Ireland here. That was our first part of our conquest, if I'm not much mistaken, which took around 400 years of gradual conquest to take over.
Given that the nation was an island, the likelihood of being invaded or conquered was somewhat lower than a country that was surrounded on all sides by foreign powers.
Yeah.
Although Britain was not completely immune to incursions, it definitely benefited geographically, both in terms of external threats and when it came to any border disputes. Britain had a pretty clear and straightforward border between itself and any other nations.
Yeah.
While Scotland and England split the landmass that was bilaterally united with the essential.
Kind of technically speaking, that's kind of wrong. There's quite a few different countries under the Great British rule. Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and I think I'm forgetting something. Yeah, Northern Ireland. All of Ireland was once part of England, but most of it got, as you're probably well aware, wanted their independence. But we still got roughly around that bit there. So there's technically speaking 3 separate countries inside the Great British Empire: Scotland, England, and Northern Ireland, um, which is now called the Great British Empire. If you're talking about England, then you're talking about this bit, not the whole country as a whole. If you're talking about Scotland, same thing. You're talking about Scotland, but not the British. You know what I'm trying to say?
Of Scotland's King James VI to the throne of
Yeah,
England.
technically speaking, when he did King James, I believe that's his name. King James came into power, and they did unify the two lands, and Scotland did join the English Empire, and well, turning it into Great Britain.
In 1603, both states would together make up the nation of Great Britain by 1707, sharing their outward borders with nothing but the North Atlantic Ocean and the North Sea. This open position, with easy access for maritime expeditions, also gave Great Britain an upper hand when it came to reaching other countries and continents. Needing only to cross over foreign land when they wished to reach countries more inward on their continent, the Brits were able to sail to just about any coastal nation without much resistance.
Okay.
Still, oceanic adventures would not have been so effortless for the British Empire without a strong naval fleet.
Yeah, our naval fleet happened to be, not anymore, I don't think, but was the greatest in the world at one point in history. And it had to be with what having to, with us invading France and Spain and Norway and other such countries as well. Our naval had to be really, really, really good. And not just for invasion, but to defend our country as well. But it had to be quite a good fleet to do that. And it happened to be one of the most terrifying forces in the English army at the time, which was the Royal Navy.
Were the size.
And it's not so powerful now since World War II. America now trumps us with that. They've got like, what is it? Nine carriers, I believe. Air carriers, or is it 12? I'm not too sure. I think it's between that number. And they've got like 50 dreadnoughts and multiple other ships in construction. America now takes that lead with that since World War II. But before that, our naval power was really substantial for many, many centuries, guys. That and the English longbow. That was our second greatest thing before, guns and gunpowder.
And power of the Royal Navy became a center point of British success.
Yep.
While Great Britain did not always control the world's oceans, the reason they began to skyrocket as an unignorable maritime power by the 18th century is largely due to the fact that they invested more money in ships and guns than other naval forces. The government and citizens of the British Empire truly believed that the future of their wealth was to be found through the ocean.
And that was for tobacco and sugar, if I'm not much mistaken. And they set up multiple colonies like Jamaica, the Philippines, and other such colonies. I'm not very good with names, guys, but that was mostly for tobacco and sugar cane. If I'm not much mistaken, guys.
Recognizing the importance of overseas trade, as well as a fleet that could also defend their land if ever required, the Brits made sure to adequately fund the Royal Navy. The Empire's focus on trade additionally contributed vastly to its triumphant transcontinental growth. Intent more on gaining wealth and increasing trade than on consolidating power through conquest, the Brits were able to create a more desirable environment for others to become a part of.
Okay.
After the successful colonization attempts in North America and the West Indies during the 1600s, the British Empire began to establish a commercial system that allowed for exponential success within Great Britain and its overseas territories. Yeah. Colonies were granted monopolies for their products in the British market, and therefore were to conduct trade via British ships. In 1651, the Navigation Act would prompt the development of a closed economy between the empire and its colonies, thus creating a system where all colonial imports were required to come from Great Britain and all colonial exports were to be sent directly to the British market by the way of British ships. During the same century, the British East India Company was established
Yeah.
as a means of trade between Great
Which we
Britain.
ruled for around 2 centuries. It, and it was only we only lost that colony that we outright ruled India for, like I said, for 2 centuries, and only losing and grabbing their own independence in 1947 by Mahatma Gandhi, who starved himself. I can't remember how long. I'm not too familiar with the India part of it, but he starved himself for a while. I know that much. I don't, obviously for a couple of, or I say a couple of years. Well, he starved it. I know he starved himself, and they grabbed their independence. They did try a little while back in the 1800s, if I'm not much mistaken, but due to the fact the Indians, that's probably the wrong word, weren't too, what's the word, rebellious. It kind of failed, and it didn't go ahead again until 1947, 2 years 1945, 1946. Yeah, 2 years roughly after World War II ended, where they grabbed their independence.
East Asia, Southeast Asia, and India. Initially focused on the spice trade, the East India Company later incorporated other goods such as silk, cotton, tea, opium, and more. Politics made its way into the company later on, despite the origin being purely based on establishing more trade opportunities. Driven limitlessly by the concept of controlling a global trade market, the British Empire continued to extend its reach across the continents of Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, and the Americas. While the process of colonization varied from territory to territory, one thing that remained consistent was the form in which these expeditions began. Unlike other empires who chose to expand through the use of military might and
We did so
sovereign claims
for
to
trade,
power, the British
I
facilitated
believe.
most of their expansion through the establishment of trading posts and systems. Nonetheless, the British Empire was not a completely non violent authority. On top of the Anglo Dutch and Anglo Spanish wars near the start of British expansion, the empire also engaged in conflict with its American colonies during the American Revolutionary War, later followed by the dissension in India, succeeding the decline of the Mughal Empire, and leaving the British East India Company as a prominent political power in the region. The presence of Britain in India was also notably more forceful than some of their other trade focused enclaves,
Okay.
demonstrated by the expansion of the East India Company's power through the threat of violence against those who protested. The continued tensions between the British and French were no longer secluded in India either, as the Seven Years' War erupted in 1750.
French seized almost all of its possessions in North America. The islands of Saint Vincent, Tobago, Dominic, I can't pronounce names, guys, I'm really sorry. Dominica, Glenda, and the northern circus in India to Great Britain. France seized Louisiana and its territories west of the Mississippi River to Spain. Spain seized Florida to Great Britain. Okay.
56, lasting until the Treaty of Paris was signed in 1763, leaving Britain as the leading power across India and the world's oceans. When the American Revolutionary War came in 1775, after the British Empire responded to the No Taxation Without Representation movement of the Americans by sending troops to try and subdue the colonies, France and Spain chose once again to go to war with Britain, now as allies of the newly declared United States. In 1783, at the Peace of Paris, the British Empire was forced to acknowledge American independence,
Yeah.
in turn, relinquishing any control over their former colonies. Devising a new strategy after such a drastic loss of territory, Great Britain now turned its attention toward the continents of Asia, Africa, and Australia,
Part of the
marketing what.
reason, if I'm not much mistaken, the reason why we lost that war with America was due to the fact we were fighting other wars, if I'm not much mistaken, in Europe, and we didn't have the manpower to send overseas to deal with that at the time. I know there was another invasion attempt, I believe, in 1815 which obviously didn't go well because of, well, we don't have that territory. Duh. Um, but no, so yeah, that's what. But I bet I know about that.
What some historians call the beginning of the Second British Empire. Though trade between the United States and Great Britain actually continued after the installation of independence, the Empire chose to utilize the uncolonized coasts of Australia, which had been discovered by a Dutch explorer, Willem Janszoon, in 1606, and later claimed for the British Crown by James Cook in 1770 under the name of New South Wales. Still feeding their fresh craving for expansion in South Asia, the British suddenly engaged in a series of conflicts after the Battle of Plassey, which had occurred in 1757. By 1774, the British Empire took on a chain of attacks. The Anglo-Mysore Wars were fought until 1799, followed by clashes with the Pindaris. Attacks on places like Sindh and Burma also accelerated the new consolidation efforts of the British East India Company, on top of what was referred to as the Doctrine Lapse, where the Brits forbid the ascension to the throne of any Hindu ruler if they were not the natural heir. Once the current Hindu leader either died or was removed in some way, the British would occupy his state and gain control. These acts
No,
by the British
wow.
Empire, combined with other forms of forced westernization of the
Didn't know
region,
that bit. I was saying I didn't know that bit, guys. I didn't know that they banned that, and they went. Oh, wow, jeez.
led to the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857 to 1859. Tired of the current heavy handed British rule, the Indian troops of Meru sparked a rebellion that would spread throughout the nation. Peace was finally declared in July of 1859, and the British East India Company was scrapped. Although the empire maintained a level of control under the crown until 1947.
Yep.
During this span of time, Great Britain set about making its presence better known in Africa as well.
Yeah.
Although the Royal African Company had been established,
We colonised quite a lot of this bit here, and not too good of names, including South Africa. We we invaded this bit here. I'm not good with names, guys. I apologise. I'm just going to demonstrate with my mouse before he talks. We invaded right here and took the coast during the Napoleon wars. We obviously we attacked the French colonies there and around South America as well, including a Dutch colony around here, which was aligned with the French Napoleon as well, and also Madagascar as well.
back in the 17th century, finding ample profit in the slave trade until its abolition in 1807.
Yeah, we abolished our slavery quite early on compared to America. They didn't do it, what I think was what, for another 50 years. And then they had the war, or then they had the American Civil War, where they, you know, as you know, the history from there, guys. But yeah.
It was not until the
Oh, damn, whoops.
19th century that the Brits realized the potential benefit of forming a trade route across Africa, with its eyes set on establishing outposts spanning from Egypt down to the southern half of the continent. The British Empire found itself in a race against the other growing European powers, such as Italy and Germany, which eventually led to the Berlin Conference. The conference, which occurred in 1884, was intended to create some harmony between the competing colonizers. Great Britain was ultimately awarded most of northeastern Africa and all of southern Africa, meaning that at its peak in the continent, the British Empire ruled over approximately 30% of the African population. Globally, at the height of Britain's domination, it controlled roughly 22 to 25% of the world's land surface, and by 1938, governed around 20% of the world's population. This remarkable prosperity was accomplished through a geographical advantage, supreme naval might, and the strategic focus on trade and wealth over bullish sovereign power for the sake of an emperor.
What about this territory here? We had this stuff here, and also a bit of Asia as well. I'm not much mistaken. We had a bit of Asia as well, surely, because we even had a bit of Japan. We even conquered a bit of Japan slightly after World War Two, between the years of 1946 to 1952, if I'm not much mistaken about the year there. We've had a bit of Japan and quite a little bit more of Asia. We didn't have much of Asia compared to the rest of the world, but definitely know we had Russia at some point in the stage around that bit there as well. But let me know if I'm wrong about any of this. If I'm completely wrong, I'm assuming I know I'm correct about some of that stuff. But let me know what bits I'm wrong about. Let me know your points of view as well, guys, as well as any history recommendations, science recommendation, music, movie trailers, game trailers, anything and anything in between, guys. Let me know that as well. And until next time, guys, you'll be listening to me, Found Popcorn. Found popcorn, 798. Until next time, guys, stay popping, stay popping.